the FT8 is almost all the bands end in 074, but a couple bands like 80 meters and 12 meters and one other 30 meters. The it doesn't in the it isn't an 074, but all the rest of them are.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to begin promptly. Welcome to our second class in the Ham Radio General License Series. As before, please edit your screen name to include your call sign or your last name. Here's our the email addresses of your instructors. As indicated before, we're happy to get questions in between classes. Send any of us an email and we will respond, and many of our answers will be correct. And dinosaurs on coffee cups are also funny, in case anyone was wondering. This is being recorded as last week, and I'll send out a link after the class is over. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the text, or did anyone try and fail or have difficulty with HamTest online? Okay, I think that's good.
Oh, yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but I did find an Anki card pack for quizzing yourself once you kind of know everything, or at least once we've gone through the books. I find it a pretty handy set of flashcards.
Oh, great. If you can put the information in the chat, if you like it, other people probably will too.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for that. So this is our second class out of a total of 6, as you can see from the syllabus. Tonight, we're going to talk about the rules for CW, continuous wave, or Morse code. Bob will be taking us through the exam questions. I'm going to do a short CW demo, and all of you at the end of my demo will be competent to receive CW for the 2 characters I'm going to teach you. And I promise it will be fun. It'll give you a small taste of what it feels like. Bob will continue with digital operation. We'll be joined a little bit later by Patrick. It's W6AJR. Sorry, that's a typo. Patrick is right now in an online CW class. He's a new ham, and he's going to join us after 8 o'clock and tell us why he wanted to learn CW. It's not required. It's totally optional. None of you have to do it, but you do have to know a little bit about it to pass the exam. And then Bob will end reviewing the questions relating to emergency operation. And remember, this is a live class. The point of a live class is that you can ask questions, and questions are important. And I really encourage everyone to ask questions whenever something doesn't seem clear. You'll be helping not only yourself, but your classmates. Does anyone have any questions now? All right, Bob, would you like to take it away, please?
Thanks, John. I really appreciate that. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to have you with us again. We're going to be covering 3 different subjects. As John said, we're going to be covering CW or constant wave. And we're also going to be discussing digital operations. I'm a little light on digital operations, but we're going to get through it. We got some real experts on digital stuff. And then we're also going to talk about emergency stuff. So how fun is that going to be? Let's see here. Let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do CW lives. And we're going to start on that one there. Let's see here. So we're just going to start right in on it. And let me see if I can get this out of the way, which is, there we go. Perfect. Okay. When selecting a CW transmitting frequency, 150 to 500 hertz is the minimum frequency separation you should allow in order to minimize interference to stations on adjacent frequencies. The reasoning behind that is because if we are too close to other stations, it can be very confusing. And also the thing is that when we're doing CW, it's very narrow. And so you can cram a lot of CW into a small space as far as different parties are concerned. And if you don't have that proper separation, it can get jammed up pretty quickly. So it's really important to remember that. So basically, you're just gonna have to memorize that it's 150 to 500 hertz. Remember, we're not talking kilohertz or gigahertz or anything like that. This is just hertz. So it's not going to be that painful, but you got to remember that. The term zero beat in CW operation means matching your transmit frequency to the frequency of the received signal. There's different ways of doing that. I'm going to offer a suggestion as to get more information on that. And I will share that with you soon. The best speed to use a CW, answering CW in Morse code, is the speed in which the CW was sent, meaning that what we try to do is match up exactly what the lowest denominator is. So for instance, when I was doing CW, there was a time when I was doing 5 words per minute. There was some people that were doing 13 words per minute, 20 words per minute. I had to listen to them calling CW quite a few times to catch their call sign in order to answer back, and then they stepped down as far as Morse code speed is concerned. So the best speed to use answering a CW in Morse code is the speed in which I want to receive that. That tells the other person that for them to either slow down or speed up or what have you. Any questions here? Which is this one right here, which should be the fastest speed you're comfortable copying. When sending CW, a C added to the RST report means it's chirpy or an unstable signal. So that's on the exam as well. Chirpy usually is, it's hard to explain, but usually what it is that means that there's either something wrong with your power supply or is possibly also a poor design in the transmitter or poor voltage regulation. There's another reason why it would be chirpy also, where somebody would give you a C, would be if you have some RF feedback that's coming into the ham shack or into the transmitter. So we're going to talk about RST, which stands for reliability, readability, signal strength, and tone. RST is used quite a bit, actually, not only in CW, but also as far as single sideband on ability and signal strength, so RS. Sometimes we'll say 5x5, which is really good. There's one thing that if you're wondering about zero beating and stuff like that, there's this guy, his name is Dave, and you might want to write his name down. He's on YouTube. He's got a lot of YouTube videos, and he's really good at explaining a lot of things ham radio wise. And I would strongly suggest that you search that and see all the stuff that he's got available. He does a really good job. So here's an explanation. This is a video here explaining zero beating. We had kind of touched on QRP rigs for CW as well. And so there's somebody's got their.
Yeah.
Can we call over Gary and just see when he can come down here?
Somebody's got their microphone open. If you can close your microphone, that'd be great.
I fixed it, Bob.
Thank you. So there's really a lot of fun in these as far as different kinds of CW kits and so on. As you can see from the pictures on the right-hand side, I think somebody stole one of my pictures from last week, for heaven's sakes. Let's see here. Transceivers usually have specific filters for CW mode, which is a very narrow filter. If you buy an HF rig, they also have CW filters as well. Sometimes. So sometimes depending on the rig that you buy, the HF rig that you buy, it does not have the filter, but you can buy the filter, open up the radio and drop the CW filter in. So in other words, they've got sockets that are inside for that purpose. That's how they reduce the cost of emitter, so on. I've got a Yaesu mobile rig that I use, which is HF all band all mode, and it does not have the CW filter. I wanted a narrow filter that I could use with CW and so on. I checked with the Yaesu on their filter. It ran $160. I was actually able to go on eBay, and a guy was making the filters for $30, and it plugged right in. It worked just fine. So always keep your eyes and ears open for stuff like that. Yeah, and then there's also there's sections in the bands. If we take a look at that chart that we've got, you'll notice that there are certain sections that are for CW specifically, and also for QRP, which means low power, right? And that's really, really great. I'm really glad that they did allocations as to which frequencies are what's for single sideband voice or phone, and then also for CW data and so on. So you can check that out in your book. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about what this is saying here, which is why QRP works and CW works. There's been a few times where I've been on single sideband voice and the band had started to go away, where I could not finish the conversation. And what ends up happening sometimes is we end up falling back to CW to finish the conversation. Because it's CW, it's just a signal. There's no modulation or anything like that. It's just the signal, and it's on, and on, which Sun's Way does. That has very little power, and it's very easy to copy through noise and so on. It says my internet connection is unstable. Let's see. Am I still doing okay?
You're better now.
Okay. So CW is really good for cutting through a bunch of noise and stuff like that as well. So we're going to do the RST. The readability part is here. This can be voice and CW. These are not on the exam, by the way. Here's signal strength. Tone, of course, CW is phone. And you can see all of the different things that could possibly happen with your transmitter. Something that I kept with me all the time is this little chart right here. You can find it on the internet. You just Google and you go ham radio RST, and you'll find the JPEG for this. Print it out, and there you go. This is good to have anyway. I've got one actually printed out right here in SOFI underneath the plastic here, and it's good for singles as well. Printing that out is probably not a bad idea. So there's certain things that are called Q signals, which is usually 3 letters. They're usually used for Morse code, although they have gone over to single sideband or phone or what have or voice. And but it was mostly for CW to make things easier as far as, what's your location? Instead of doing that, what is your location? You would do, what is it?
QTH.
QTH, yes, that's right. I got a brain freeze. So there's all kinds of different Q signals. We have to memorize a few of them for the exam. This this one I used quite a bit actually when I was first learning CW, which means slow down or send slower. There have been times when I actually would send QRS and the person would not slow down. In fact, they would speed up faster. I don't know why somebody would do that, but I've had 1 or 2 people where I was sending at a certain speed, they would speed up a little bit, which was fine. It was a push for me. But then they kept going faster and faster and faster. And I mean, every sentence that they used, they went like 5 words per minute faster, and it was okay, forget it. And I would end up signing off because I couldn't catch up with them. So this one here is pretty important, and this one is on the exam, which is QRS. This is kind of easy because it's send slower, so S. QRL asks if you're busy or is this frequency in use. Now, I was using this quite a bit in CW as well, and the reasoning behind that is because there may be a station that I'm not hearing that actually is using the frequency, and the person that I would be able to hear is listening. So it's always good. And also, as far as single sideband is concerned or voice, it's really important to ask if the frequency is in use or not. First of all, the first thing we do though is we listen, right? We turn the radio on, we tune to the frequency that we think that we want to use. And I would, wait for 2 minutes or something like that, 2 or 3 minutes, and see if I hear anybody talking or anything. And then if I think I hear something faint in the background or something like that, I'll ask, is the frequency in use? Well, in CW, since we can't use our voice, we will tap out QRL, which means is this frequency in use? So, and that's on the exam as well. So QRL is, are you busy or is this frequency in use? We have another Q signal, which is QRN, and that's saying that I'm having trouble with static. This is also on the exam as well. Now, there are 2 different two Q codes that are about static and noise and interference and stuff like that. This one is QRN, and for me, the way I can remember this is it's natural. It's noise that is natural or static, earth static, anything like that. There's another one that's called QRM, which is usually interference from man-made things. It could be somebody that's transmitting over the top, could be a stuck microphone, it could be anything. RM, man-made. And for a lack of any other way for me to remember it, but QRN is nature, natural. This Q signal here, QRV, I've never used. I don't know why, but I never used it, but you're going to have to memorize it anyway. And that's QRV, and it says, I am ready to receive messages. As we can see, there's no way of relating that to anything that I know of, not unless somebody else wants to chime in as to how they're able to remember that.
Maybe the control V for pasting something. I'm ready to be pasted. if
Well,
you're, if
I
you're,
can't,
you know, it's the computer thing, Control V.
I
Oh,
can't,
that's really good. These things were devised in the 1920s, and they
Yeah.
looked way ahead.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Visionary.
A
Or it could
visionary,
be
yeah.
the other way around. It was a ham radio person who thought, this seems like a similar thing.
Yeah, okay, so QRV means that I am plastered, is what that means. So, okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Let's see here. QSL means acknowledge of receipt. Now, this is going to be kind of, for me, it was easy. It was learned and so on because, let's see if I can pull this up here. So QSL is an acknowledge of receipt. So all Q signals always begin with the letter Q and only have 3 letters. I was going to show you something else, but we're going to cover that. So we're going to cover QSL a little bit more. So now the guy who made this drags this thing out. It's kind of like, okay, whatever. Let me just go through it all. Here's our nature one. I'm troubled with static.
I love how QRT almost spells quit.
Yeah, huh? I know. True. That's true. QRM I was telling you about, transmission is being interfered with. Usually it's man-made interference.
So on QRM, does the M mean man-made? Is that the
No, well, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, it was the easiest for me to remember.
okay? Thank you.
I have a question. Are QRM and QRN, problematic since they're going to sound so similar in the code?
No, not usually. You mean as far as actually tapping out the code?
That's right. When you're copying.
I mean, they're 2 characters, but that's
Yeah, usually if you're going voice, with single sideband phone, whatever you want to call it, then usually you just say I'm having trouble with static. Whereas with Morse code, we're actually tapping out that letter, and it's very distinguishable between M and N. So it's usually not a problem with CW. I've never had a problem with it anyway. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I did. I just, I was just thinking M is what, two DAWs and the N is a DAW and a DIT. So
Right.
right.
Yep. And so I've never really had a problem with that.
I can't tell if you're sending an M or N, and because there's too much N.
exactly. That was the underlying part, to my question is, in situations where you actually send that, I mean, I wonder if that would be problematic, but I guess not. So thank you.
It could be. I have seen times where we've had some really a lot of noise and stuff like that, and we would send it 2 times or 3 times just to get it through so it's clear. I've had one person who was really trying to be helpful with me as well and was sending everything twice as far as letters were concerned. It drove me nuts. So, and I think if there's a lot of static going on and stuff like that, probably QRN would be assumed on the other end as well. So that's a good question, though. Thank you for asking. Do we have any other questions so far? Okay. QSL again. I'm acknowledging receipt. QSY. I think everybody remembers QSY if you were participating in our nets. We would QSY or change to another repeater, and we would say QSY. So these are the 5 here that are going to be on the exam.
So now you kind of also understand the QSL card a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to have on one of the slides is the different QSL cards, including my QSL card and Kathy's as well.
What I meant was where the name comes from.
Yeah, the QSL card, right? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bob,
Yeah,
can you go back to that last slide for just a sec?
I think I can. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, when a CW operator sends KN at the end of the transmission, it means the operator is listening only for a specific station or stations. That's pretty helpful as well. Sometimes what happens is that there is a ham radio operator, or one of us is specifically looking for maybe a relative or somebody on that frequency. In other words, they've set up a schedule. In ham lingo, they sometimes say it's a sked for a meeting with someone like a relative or a friend. They do it once a week. They do it every day, whatever. So they would include KN saying, if everybody could like stay clear, I'm just looking for this one station. So that's what KN is. I've never used it myself, but they've got it on here as part of the test. And yeah, this is called a pro sign and is used in CW only. AR is another pro sign, and that's the end of a formal message is what that is. We're going to talk about a key a little later, and the keyer is really handy, especially for if you're using what's referred to as a paddle. So, and as you can see right here, it's part of it, the exam as well. A paddle is, it's got two leaves on it. We're gonna see pictures of it. So I'll wait until I get through there. Actually, here we go. Yay. Okay. So this is what's referred to as a paddle right here. So when you place your finger and you press on one side, it will, what did I do? There we go. If I press on one paddle, then I get a dit. And when I press on the other paddle, I'll get a da. This is an electronic keyer. So what it does is if I keep this paddle pressed for a long duration of time, I'll get da, 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 da. And if I press this paddle over here and keep it pressed, I'll get dit, 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 dit. So you can actually leave your finger on, let's say, for instance, we wanted to do an M, we could keep our finger pressed on that one and go da, da. And so that would be one press instead of two, and so on. The interesting thing about these keyers, and you can buy tons of them, there are all kinds of different models. There's kits. We'll be showing you a kit as well. As it says here, newer HF rigs have electronic keyers built into them. But there's also ones that you can build also out of a kit if you wanted to do that. If you were doing the QRP rigs, the little QRP rigs that run $30 or whatever, you can also, it does not have a keyer with it, even though it's meant for CW. And you could buy a kit for the keyer, the electronic keyer, and connect it to your little QRP rig. Let's see, when we're using, so there's a QSK as well. This is really kind of handy. Some HF rigs have these, the older ones do not. It's anytime that you press the key, either a paddle or a straight key, when you send that dit or da, the rig itself is actually able to listen or turn on the speaker in between, so you can hear if somebody else is trying to respond back to you or not. Let's say, for instance, something has happened, the person needs to log off or what have you while you're in the middle of your transmission, you're actually able to hear that. And this is on the exam as well. So this is called QSK, or full break. Like I said before, some of the rigs have that. It's got a full break on it. I can't remember if my Kenwood's got one or not. I think it does. This is a nice little rig made by ICOM, and this is what's referred to as a waterfall. As you can see, I think we touched on that a little bit. And we're going to touch on it again because it's becoming a new standard, where each one of these lines here, so this is time-based. So in other words, it's actually waterfalling down as we go through time. These are all the different frequencies, and we're able to see a bunch of frequencies at the same time. So each one of these lines here is actually a ham station. So QSK is where we can receive, our receiver is turned on in between our DITs and our DAWs. Okay, now we're going to talk about beacons. Beacons are cool to have as well. I would strongly suggest that everybody check those out because they're very helpful. It's a very helpful tool that can be used to see if there's any of the bands that are open to certain countries. There's certain beacons that are used, and we're going to talk more about that. So observation of propagation and reception is the purpose of a beacon station as identified by the FCC rules. So this is really a good tool. Basically what happens is, and we're going to be looking at a chart, it's a number chart that shows where beacons are located at in what country and in what band, so we can tune to that frequency at a specific time, and we can see if that band is open to that country. This is also on the exam where the beacon stations have a power limit of 100 watts. Now, this is fairly easy to remember if we know about HF rigs. And as we all know, the standard HF rig usually is 100 watts. So to remember, that's pretty easy to remember. If you wanted to adapt that a little bit, if we all remember our VHF and UHF rigs, the standard wattage output on those is 50 watts. So we go double. So if we go double what our VHF, UHF rigs are, that would be 100 watts as well. PEP stands for peak envelope power, and we're not going to go into that yet.
Another way to remember it could be your standard powerful light bulb.
True. Yes.
So it's got to be less than a light bulb.
Right. It was the maximum watts.
Question,
Yep.
Bob. This is John. When we look at the 10-meter band, why are there two sets of frequency ranges that are listed for beacons?
I was not aware that there's two different frequencies for beacons on 10 meters.
Ranges. So there's 28.190 to 28.225. That's the first one. And the second one overlaps slightly. It says 28.200 to 28.300.
Huh. I was not aware of that. Does any of the I will have to look into that.
Sure.
Give us a chance to check that out. Good question.
Sounds good.
Hey, you stumped the panel. Good job. Let's see. One of the conditions in which beacon stations must comply is that there must be no more than one beacon signal in the same band from a single location. So it might be that there, for one frequency, it might be from one location and then another frequency is from a different location. They can't have a beacon on the same frequency from two different locations at the same time. Otherwise, obviously it's going to be very confusing for everybody. So this is a requirement that there can be only one beacon on one frequency at one time. And here they are. Now I find this very interesting. I was looking at this chart and I find it very interesting. If we notice, we've got the 10 meter band and we go all the way down to the 20 meter band. And did you ever notice that 40 meters is gone, 80 meters is gone, and anything that's lower, I noticed that. And I think what it is because usually the 40 meter band and 80 meter band in general is open at some point somewhere. But as we can see here, and that's what kind of stumped me is I was looking at the 10 meter band right here, and it's only at 2820. But with that said, I understand what you were saying as far as how wide that was, because it's at 28.2, if I recall correctly, to 28.3. So that's pretty interesting. But so this is a really nice chart to have. You have your difference that goes across here, right here. You have your different times. This is in UTC. This should be in UTC. And then UTC time or Greenwich Mean Time, what have you. Was there a question? I don't know if there was or not. And then there's the different countries and so on. So this is pretty cool to have if you really want to know. If there is a question, be sure to chime back in. No problem to ask the question.
Yeah, Bob, question on those UTC times. Does that mean that beacon only transmits at that specific time?
Yeah, it's supposed to. Like for instance, Israel, line 13 right here. So Israel, there's their call sign, and they're transmitting on those frequencies at those times. Let's see here. 10-second phase 3 message format, which is W6WX. Each dot lasts more than 1 second. Interesting. 100 watts. Oh yeah, okay, so that would be the United States, W6WX. And what they're doing is, I find that very interesting. They first start transmitting at 100 watts, then they do 10 watts, and then they do 1 watt. If I recall correctly, I think that they run for like 10 minutes. If somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a 10-minute section just for people to pick it up and see if the band is open or not. Any other questions about beacons?
So they only do that once a day?
Yeah, right. And if you'll notice, it's really quite interesting. I think the way they've got this laid out in UTC and so on is where it's going to be a time where it's most advantageous to make contact with that country as well. We have different hours and so on. So yeah, interesting stuff. Beacons is a whole different ball game as well, but they're really handy to have. On the HF frequencies between, okay, so we're on the 10 meter band. Something to keep in mind too, for those of you who are technicians and you have actually played around with 10 meters because you're legal to do that. The problem is usually is that a technician, if they're only able to use the 10 meter band, which is HF, rarely is it cost effective to buy an HF rig just for 10 meters unless they were actually thinking about doing HF later on. But if we notice, that the beacons are set for 2820 to 2830. And it's interesting that the Santa Cruz Amateur Radio Club single sideband net on Monday nights at 7 o'clock, which we missed, is at 28308. 28308. So
I think you just answered your question.
I'm sorry?
I think you just answered your question.
I had a question?
No, the other guy's question about the why is there two bands for beacon? Because this one's for automatic and the other one's for manual.
Oh. Okay, got it. Got it.
Thank you. Good catch.
That is good. Good job. So yeah, so the if you have your HF rig already, you can tune over to 28308 for single sideband and listen in until you get your general class license. An advantage of selecting officer side when receiving CW signals on a typical HF transceiver is that it may be possible to reduce or eliminate interference from other signals. So basically what we have here is we're listening to this band right here. And if you recall correctly, we were talking about having filters and so on. The filter would actually allow this amount of frequencies to come through. But as you can see, we have the signal that we want to be listening to, which is right here. And here's the one with the interference right here. Now keep in mind, and notice up here, we're going lower sideband. We're doing the lower sideband. And this is where the beat frequency oscillator is. If you guys want to know what the beat frequency oscillator is, it's very similar to the VFO, the variable frequency oscillator, which is on your little HT. When you go to the VFO mode, you can tune back and forth and so on. It's the same thing as the beat frequency oscillator as well. So you can adjust the VFO. But so here's our interference right here. If we want to try and get this person out of our way so that we're not listening to them when we're doing CW, we can actually we can switch over to USB upper sideband and go further up. And now we got this person that's no longer being heard. So that's another way of doing that. This is on the exam, so try to keep that in mind too. This is actually a very handy tool to have. It really is. It is good to match receiver bandwidth to the bandwidth of the operating mode because it results in better signal to noise ratio, which is also correct. If your bandwidth is too narrow, really then in the full tone of the signal that you should be getting, and it might be harder to hear through noise and stuff like that, mainly because you're so narrow. In other words, you're not getting the full spectrum. If your bandwidth is too wide, now you're introducing a bunch of noise all the way on both sides, and that can create a problem as well. So it's good to match it as well as you possibly can. Okay, let's see. Okay, now we're going to go through the questions. Let's see, how are we doing on time? I'm going to rip through this real quick. I think this one is that kind of throws me off, and it's something that I just got to memorize and everything else. It's the 150 to 500 hertz. So, and as we noticed, that's the out of all of these, it's the highest numbers. So A is the answer. I get a kick out of this. This is interesting. They're all A's. Let's see. What does the term zero beat mean? So what we're zero beating is matching your transmitter frequency with received signal.
The answer is A.
Yes, exactly. The answer is A. I'm going to kind of whip through these pretty fast because I want to get to some other stuff here that I've got.
So if we just mark A for every answer, we'll ace the test.
Right. Yeah, we'll A the test.
Bob, instead of covering all the questions, maybe we should just ask if anyone has any questions for us about this.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm afraid we will run out of time if we go through every question.
Right. And I was trying to whip through something that I want to talk to. Does anybody have any questions while I go through this?
One thing that I was going to say in response to a comment that someone made earlier, right before 7 o'clock when we started, which was, I think it was actually about the last class where you got to do a little math to switch the frequency, the bands into frequencies, but then you have to know one more thing, like the phone band is at the lower top of it, or so it's kind of a two-step process for answering those questions. Yeah, you got to do the math, divide by 300 it into 300, but then you also have to know one additional piece of information depending on what they're asking for. Is it just below or just above, or then the math that you just did?
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's they're not going to give you the license easily. So, but the nice thing is once we get through it, why then you don't have to worry about it anymore and you just use your little chart. These are QSL cards, by the way. They're fun to collect. There's a, I've got a ton of them. I've got about 120 of them since I've been worked all states and did a bunch of other stuff. Here's some classics though. Not Kathy's or mine, but others. Any other questions while I rip through this?
How about a vendor? Do you have a vendor recommendation for those QSL cards if you wanted to make some, have some made?
You know, the thing is that there's some people that make them themselves, but there are vendors who make QSL cards. And if you would be, if anybody wants to email me, I've got a favorite one that I've got. John, do you have a QSL card?
I do not.
You do not. Okay. Anybody else have a QSL card that is made? Okay.
I do.
Karen, you do? Who do you use?
I forget the name of them, but they were the people who were at Pacificon.
Yeah, I think, isn't it QSL cards for cheap or something like that?
No,
Okay.
but they were pretty cheap and they did a lot of design work too. So I was very happy with them.
If anybody wants to email me, I'll send them what my QSL card design was. You can design your own QSL card too. Go down to Office Max or and just get like Avery cards and print them yourself. If you're not going to be sending them out everywhere, then it gets relatively cheap. Here's some more pictures of some different keyers. Here's the one that I was telling you about. That's the kit, the keyer kit. Here's the paddles right here. This is how you adjust the weighting and stuff. But this is really kind of cute if you really want to know. This one here is made by MFJ. It's got memory, so you can put in there your call sign and just press the button and it'll put your call sign out for you.
Bob, if we could go back to the pictures of the cards. Are there copyright issues in terms of images that you can or cannot use on your card?
There can be. It depends on what image that is. For this one here, this was properly ripped off from my QSL card that the QSL card company had made. This one here is a picture, is my picture that I took since I'm a scenic photographer. And so this was a picture that I took, so I don't have to worry about that. All of these people, these are actual real QSL cards that they had made.
It's,
So,
it's unlikely that would be a problem.
Yeah.
People get worried when you start making money from someone else's image. Nobody's going to make any money off a QSL card except maybe the printer.
right.
I bring it up because I don't have the rights to the Three Stooges or
The Three Stooges are all
W8FH.
dead, so you're okay.
Well,
I don't
still,
think
so
they'll be
somebody
putting those-
somebody owns the rights to their images and usages and films, and it ain't me.
It won't
I don't
be
wanna
a
get in trouble.
problem. It
I
won't
don't
be a
think that's gonna be
problem.
a problem at all.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see, we did the Keers. Let me see if there's anything else that I've got in here, and that's it. Okay. John, let's see, Patrick's not here yet. John, did you want to go ahead and do your thing?
Yes, could you stop sharing, please?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay. This will be a little demo, take 5 minutes or less, and you will all have fun. I promise, or double your money back. So what you need right now is a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, and you're going to learn count them, two CW characters. I just have to move back to the other side here. So, first of all, we'll just do a little listen test. Can someone tell me whether that's easily audible?
It was a little chirpy.
Loud enough?
A little bit of QRM.
I need a straight answer. Is it loud enough?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we're going to learn 2 letters. One, first is the letter A, as in alpha, and it sounds like this. Don't think of it as that dash. Just think of it as this sound. That is the letter A. Okay, that's the letter A. You now know 1/26th of the alphabet. Great start. The second letter you're going to learn is the letter N, as in November. Sounds like this. That is November. Okay, everybody got it? There's A and there's N.
So I thought it should be Dada for A and Dadit for N, but from what it sounded like, it was just one stream, one sound stream. I didn't hear the 2 parts.
Yeah, your audience not distinct, John.
I
There's a
couldn't
little-
tell the difference between the
The
two.
audience.
Yeah.
Gary, what did you say?
It's not distinct. It, like I said, it's a little chirpy. There's a little distortion, and it's hard to hear a break between the 2
I
elements
think
of the character.
I think it's the room noise echo that's come around
That
and,
could
and
be.
mask.
Yeah, that could be.
Let's
Dadit.
Is that better if I go slower?
There you go.
That's better, yes.
Okay, what letter is this?
Hey.
A is right. Okay, what letter is this?
And
Yes. Okay, now you're experts already. Okay, I'm going to send a 4-letter word using those characters. If you're ready to copy. Anyone recognize a woman's name?
Anna.
Anna is correct. Okay, you guys are doing great. Here's another 4-letter word. Okay, I'll send it again. This happens to be another woman's name.
None.
Anyone receive it?
No.
Anybody
Very
we know?
good. All right, one more word. This last word is edible. Anyone recognize that?
That's
Banana.
not a bread.
Bread, indeed. Okay, you are all certified Morse code operators for those two letters. Just a reminder, there's no requirement to learn Morse code. You don't have to learn any more than those two letters, which you will never forget after this. But some people think it's fun, and it does have some communications advantages. But I wanted you to have just a little taste of what it's like to receive Morse code. Sorry for the distortion provided by Zoom, but that's our demo. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, John. Greatly appreciated. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
I had fun. I don't know if anybody else did.
I did. And that's all that really matters. So there you have it. Let's see. Nana responded, it looks like, or she just came on, one of the two. We're expecting Patrick to be on a little bit after 8 o'clock. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press on, and then we'll have Patrick in between this one, which is digital operations, and emergency. So we're going to go ahead and continue on. If anybody's putting anything in chat, I'm not able to see it because I'm concentrating on the class. So
Don't worry, we're on top of it, Bob.
okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the digital operating. I don't know why people pronounce that wrong, but I'm going to try and get everybody converted back over to the proper way of saying it, which is digital, and we'll see how we do. So let's see here. We are going to go to digital operating here. So basically, we're going to talk about the frequencies and so on. This is, I think it was either Dan or John or somebody said, this is a memorizing thing as far as these are concerned. For me, when I was taking these exams, I blew these off. I tried to memorize them as much as I could, but I knew I was going to miss 2 or 3 of the questions and ace the rest. And when that was perfectly fine by me. So, put time in these if you feel you must, and that's fine. If you're great at memorizing things, that's awesome, wonderful. Otherwise, just put what you can is all. Let's see, what else have we got? Let's see, this is the 80-meter band here.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Question. On these specific windows where you're able to do code, is that listed anywhere for the different bands to where if I wanted to operate, I don't know, 10-meter band, is it a specific chart that I can look at to where I know where I can do code in that area, or data transmission, I should say?
No, actually so one of the charts that you can do, so if you were to Google on the ham bands and you look in images, you will find a really nice chart that shows where all of these are located at, where the CW portions are, and where the voice, the single sideband voice sections are, and everything else, and you can print those out. Now, there's
a nice chart on page 2 of the textbook.
Yes, there's one there as well. And then also the ARRL got a mag on the ORQ. They usually put those and you can page out as well. So you can print it out, or you can look in the book or anything else, but that will show you where those allocations are. Did that answer your question?
I was looking, when I saw that question, I went to page 2 there, and if I specifically look at the 20-meter band, and it shows code, but it doesn't show any window in there specifically for digital or data.
Let me look. It does say code. Let me look. Okay, so hang on a minute. Let me look at, where's my other chart? I've also got another chart as well. I'm going to look at that real quick.
There's a good breakdown on the ARRL website. Look at ARRL band plan, and it has the code, the digital sections and the code sections blocked out.
Yeah, my chart's not showing the code either. So you're saying it's at ARRL, Gary?
Right. Yeah, they have a pretty good one.
Okay.
It's kind of a gentleman's agreement on code and digital, because they can all be used in the same areas, but you want to find the people that are using the code in a certain spot, and people using digital, you want to find them in a certain spot. So they have kind of a convention. I'm pretty sure that's in the ARRL webpage.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Gary. The FCC doesn't distinguish between data and Morse code, but the practice is that they're separated within the CW section of the bands.
And worst case scenario, you do your CW right over the code. Or over digital. I
No, you don't, Bob.
It might work. I don't know. It'd be interesting not to try, that's for sure. Let's see here. So we've also got another one that's a bought out code, which is a 5-bit code with additional start bits. And I think I've got something on that one as well, as far as that question is concerned.
Quick question on that one. When it's five, it's 5 bits inclusive of data only. The extra bits are outside of those 5 bits. Is that correct?
You know what? I've got.
Yes, that's correct.
Is it correct? Okay.
That's correct. And if you think about it, 5 bits only gives you 32 combinations.
Exactly.
That's not enough to send all the letters and numbers.
Yeah.
So there is a shift code that's sent to give you a second set of characters. This is the oldest, most primitive form of digital radio communication, but you can still find it in use if you look for it.
Cool. Thank you.
And I've got a graphic on what packets look like as well. "170 hertz is the most common frequency shift for RTTY emissions in the amateur HF bands." I don't know what to do with that, other than that's what it is. Anybody want to add to that? Dan or John or anybody?
You can always look at the 70 and.
Yep, that's true. We can look at Allison's 70.
70.
This is just telling you the difference between the receive and transmit frequency for RTTY.
No, it's the difference between the mark and space frequency. To send a transmission, you shift your transmitter back and forth between 2 frequencies 170 hertz apart, and that is the way in which you signal the bits.
Got it. Okay.
It would be nice to have some kind of illustration of that, like a short video or something that actually shows the changes.
I would almost want to go to YouTube, and remember the guy that I asked everybody to write down? I'll bet you he's got one on specifically on that. YouTube has got some really great explanations. for me, it's hard for me to explain. John does a really good job of explaining, but for me, it's hard to explain. It's better to get somebody who knows more than I do about digital operations. I have some experience with digital operations. I have 2 different packet stations using two different models, and also I have let's see, the Signal Link, and then I also have the KPC3, which is a terminal node controller, and now I'm working with the Arden system, which is 2.4 gigahertz high speed. So I'm dabbling around it. This is not one of my expertises, that's for sure.
This is one of the times where you just kind of have to memorize the answer, I'm afraid. These are conventions. There's not a scientific reason for them. It's just the standard that's been adopted.
All kinds of things that can be that can trip up the receiving and stuff like that as well. And these are all the different modes. You know, it was funny when I started some 30 years ago, I think there was only 2 different kinds of modes that you could use, and now they're coming out with all kinds of stuff. I think the latest is the FT8, which is pretty robust if I recall correctly. And then the JT65, I think, is the older one if I recall correctly, but I could be mistaken. Karen, are you using FT8?
I don't use FT8 very much. Gary uses it quite a bit.
Gary, do you know the difference between FT8 and the JT9 and JT65s?
It's the number of tones. The JT9 uses 9 tones. The FT8 uses 8 tones, and there's a difference in the length of the transmission. They're all automatic transmissions, so you're transmitting for 15 seconds in FT8. You're transmitting for 15 seconds and listening for 15 seconds, and it's all automated. JT65, I don't know exactly what the length is, but it's like a minute or so. You know, it's much longer. But yeah, the FT8 is very popular and very robust.
Yeah, I hear that it cuts through static and noise and stuff like that really well.
I can pick up a station that's 20 decibels below the noise level.
Wow.
And copy it.
Wow. That is good. Let's see, below the RTTY segment near 14070 megahertz, a segment of the 20 meter band where most PSK31 operations are commonly found as well. So there's another mode that can be used as well, which has been around for quite a while, the PSK31. Did you want to talk to that one, Gary?
No,
okay.
I got a mental block on that.
Okay,
at the
that's
moment.
fine. I do that all the time as well. Karen, did you want to talk to it?
I have not personally played around with PSK31. It's on my to-do list. I want to say that FL Digi uses some PSK31, but I could be wrong about that.
Oh, I think you're right on that one. If I
Yeah,
recall.
it does.
Yeah,
And,
that's
and
right.
that's phase shift keying as opposed to frequency shift keying. So the signal shifts from 90 degrees to 180 degrees to 75 degrees. And that's where the phase shift comes in instead of changing frequencies.
Got it. And then we were going to talk about Barcode as well, using PSK31. that goes a bit deeper. I started digging into the Varicode thing, and it's like, okay, well, we're not gonna talk about that either. So. Thing that really important about water. Now that we have the waterfalls, so basically, these are the different ham stations right here. Each line is a ham station. The cooler colors are a weaker signal. The red colors and the yellow colors, those are stronger signals. These are supposed to be CW digital here, and they're displaying overmodulation on the waterfall. When you have a waterfall where we're showing dits and daws and stuff like that, as you guys can see here, these are all ham stations here. This is going across the frequency. So these are all going across the frequencies, all the different frequencies in that band. And you can, of course, you can zoom in and you can zoom out as well. But as you can see, the difference between the two is how you set your rig up. The number 31 in the term PSK31 represents the approximate transmitted symbol rate. Okay, I'll believe it. So there's another good one for you to memorize. PSK31 uses a code known as Varicode for different symbol lengths. If you want to delve deeper into that, you're more than welcome to do that. So the characteristics of the QPSK31. Now they've added another one, a QPSK30. Wow, that's a real spinner, isn't it? That ought to cause something to happen. So the creating FSK signal is done by changing the oscillator's frequency directly with digital control signal. So this is a very standard modem that we use, which is the Signal Link, and it's a USB. You adjust your transmit and your receive levels. So these are audio levels is what these are. And it is in relation to the radio that you're plugged into. And you can adjust the audio levels on the radio as well. And then this is for the delay. So this is the most affordable. These run about $125. If you were to buy like the KPC3, Cantronics KPC3, which is a full terminal mode controller, now we're talking more money. We're talking about $325 for that. So this is the least expensive of them all. I know a little bit. And of course, when we do higher symbol rates, we require a wider bandwidth. $300 the maximum symbol for each RTTY below 28 megahertz. These are, it's the same thing again. It's kind of like you have to kind of memorize these and then forget them later. After the test, you can forget them until you want to actually get into it. Interesting that we go to 1200 baud on the 10 meter band. And then 19.6 kilo, wow, interesting. And 56 at the 70 centimeter. Huh. So here's the sample, the maximum symbol baud rate for the different bands. And the packet had, let's see if it shows a symbol. It doesn't. Oh man, I have a visual for that. I should have put it in this section here. A requirement to conduct communications with digital station operating under automatic control outside of the automatic control band segments is that the station initiating the contact must be under local or remote control. Okay.
Bob, as opposed to what kind of control?
Automatic control.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so so it needs to be done by the control operator.
There is a protocol that you could use, or a program you could use on FT8 called JTAX. Anyway, it will automatically send the entire, it's totally automatic, and that's not actually legal to use. Whereas WSJT, you actually have to press a button for it to start, and you have to press a button again to start another conversation. So that's semi-automatic.
It brings back, it's kind of like, okay, that sounds like different kinds of guns. It's a semi-automatic or it's a manual, right?
Same idea.
Yeah, there you go. That's interesting. Let's see here. Probably the technical characteristics of a protocol must be done before using a new digital protocol on the air. And the reasoning behind that is because Part 97 does say that we're not allowed to transmit any codes that is not publicly published. So in other words, it can't be ciphers or codes or secret codes or anything like that, or it will be illegal. There we go. Yep, we want everything as open as possible. Now I found this very interesting because I'm usually used to a DB9, where apparently it originally was a DE9, which is on the test. So this jack right here, which is normally used for a serial port, oh yeah, there it is right there, is a DE9. Oh, well, there you go. So usually called a DB9, but DE9 is the original name. Hey, John, any reason why that happened? Do you know anything about that at all?
No, I don't, Bob. And I think it's silly for this to be in the question list, but it is. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
might be asking
Here,
on
here.
the test.
Yeah.
Maybe it acquired to the E acquired some cruft and it kind of got clogged up.
I don't know. That's crazy. That's about the lamest question I've seen in this pool for a long time. There we are with the RCA phono jacks. Everybody should know what those are for their stereos and stuff like that. It's important to know the duty cycle of the data mode you're using when transmitting, because some models have high duty cycles which could exceed the transmitter average power rating. We've had a lot of people where they've burned up their transceivers because they put it at full power, and the duty cycle for digital is a really long duration of time. It's very common when there's a high duty cycle where you're running when it's transmitting for a really long time, is to step down the power well below what the radio is rated at. And usually you can step down power digitally because it goes a further distance than voice would have. Let's see, you can use for internet to transfer messages. WinLink, yep. So you can check into WinLink as well. Establish contact with the gateway transmit. a connect message on the station's published frequency. Then we got Pactor. I mean, you know, this digital stuff, there's so much, just so much of different modes and stuff like that. I'm really surprised anybody can make a connection at all with all the different things. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is a good lesson. You know, don't try and memorize every digital mode.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that, you know, every year or so a new digital mode comes out and everybody flocks to it for a while.
Yeah. These symptoms may result from other signals interfering with a Pactor or a Winmore transmission. Frequency retries or timeouts, yep. Long pauses in the message transmission. Failure to establish a connection between the stations. So that one right there is on the test right there. Failure to establish a connection between stations. And all of these choices are correct. Okay. With WinLink 2000 global radio email system. Okay.
And Winmore, I believe, has been deprecated. So it's still on the exam. You still need to know it, but it really doesn't exist anymore.
Well, all right then. So now we're memorizing a dinosaur. Thanks, Karen, for that tidbit of information. I appreciate that.
Bob, we have a bit of a pacing problem with the class. We've only got 40 minutes left and quite a lot more material to cover.
We do. I think
there's not a lot of explaining for this digital stuff. There's things that people just need to memorize for the test. So I'm wondering if you could zip through it.
Yep, I can do that. Does anybody have any questions about digital? Let's put it that way. Let's move through it like that. Anybody have any questions that when they were doing their studying of digital that they had any problems? Other than memorizing? Okay, none. I want to ask, is Patrick on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Patrick, you want to take over and tell everybody about your Morse code?
Yes, I will tell everybody about my Morse code.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay. Hi, I'm Patrick, and I know we're running low on time, so I'll be quick. I have a general, and I only got my general license just a few months ago, less than 6 months ago. So I had to go through what you're going through right now. And I didn't have the benefit of this class, so I study mostly from the ARRL book that they sell, and that was helpful. And a couple of benefits of general is that you can go into HF or high frequency. And there's just a lot of stuff to play with, much like what Bob was just talking about, digital mode. It really comes alive when you're able to access high frequencies. So I'm here to talk about CW, which is really Morse code, and using one of these things called paddles. I don't know if you can see like that. It's got 2 paddles, and some of them have 1, and then you just bang out Morse code with it. And how I decided to get into CW is I actually got roped into it. At the end of my exam, the general exam, the instructors asked, okay, so who would be interested in doing CW? And I kind of raised my hand halfway, so they snagged me, got my email address, and got me to sign up for the classes that they were putting up. And so I figured, okay, I'll just learn a new skill, and if there's an emergency, I could always communicate with Morse code with somebody. not necessarily through ham, but maybe banging on a wall or something like that. I don't know, turning off and turning on light switches. I don't know how many people have seen the Parasite movie Parasite. There's a guy in there who was banging his head on a light switch to set out a emergency SOS. So I figured that would be good. And so I've been at it for about 2 weeks now, and I've learned my first 10 letters or so and maybe 5 numbers. And surprisingly, with just 10 letters, you can make up a lot of words, good words and bad words combined. And so my son got interested because I was able to teach him how to cuss in CW. And so that was interesting. Yeah, so it's fun. It's very much like it's similar to other digital forms of ham radio. I'm also into FT8, and but CW is definitely something else. And so I'm only maybe 10% into it. There's another 90% to go, and there's a lot of contests out there that you can do and take part in CW. So it's a whole wide world of stuff out there in CW and with HF in general. And so I guess to not take up too much time, I'm going to post some links in the chat section of the Zoom windows here. There are 2 places that offer these classes for CW if you're interested later on. One of them is CW Ops, CW Academy. That's the classes that I'm taking right now. And the other one is called Long Island CW Club. I've heard a presentation from them, from the local Santa Cruz ham radio club, and it was excellent. And although I haven't looked into how they teach their classes much, but I think both of them are probably going to be very easy to learn from. Okay. And does anyone have questions about CW?
I have a question, Patrick. Why do you like it?
I don't know if I like it because I still suck at it. But I like it because it's something new. And there's, if you're sort of intellectually curious, as I'm sure all of you are, that's why you're doing ham radio. It's another challenge. And it's a very old form, to me anyway, of communicating. And I think it would benefit a lot of people to know Morse code. And that's what I like about it. Not necessarily, banging on those keys and stuff, but just the idea of being able to communicate in a different manner.
Yeah, especially the different manner part. I appreciate that it's not just limited to radio. You can use it turning on light switches or banging on a pipe if there's been an earthquake, and it has a lot of applications, but the downside is that what percentage of any population knows Morse code? So
that is true. I don't know if John knows Morse code or Bob knows Morse code, but John did teach me one letter a week ago, letter K, because he did Morse code OK in an email. So I learned that one letter, but I don't know.
You had to join us late, Patrick, but I trained this whole class on 2 letters earlier, so they were even farther ahead.
Yeah, okay. O is ... right? That's pretty easy to remember. Yeah,
Patrick, I remember still to this day being on Mount Herman Road, and for some reason Ham recognized my car and he tapped out on his horn. It did. Or hi.
Yeah, don't you wish every bad driver on the road knew Morse code? Then you can well communicate with them, right?
There you go. You can cuss them out with your horn.
Yeah, if you think about it, Morse code could be so useful as long as the other party knows it. Yeah, there's so many ways to, use the different lengths of noise or light, whatever, to bang out a Morse code. So it's a lot of fun, and I congratulate you guys on wanting to tackle the general test, because HF is really a different animal. It's a whole different animal. It's so much fun, to me anyway. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. Yeah, so I did know Morse code. I had to have 18 words per minute in order to get the advanced class license at the time. And I do remember it was amazing. I think the whole point behind this is to be patient and to just keep working on it. Don't try to think about it too much or too hard. I was working at it for about 4 months, and I would do it every morning with my cup of coffee before I was even awake, and start just, listening to it and all that stuff. And I'll repeat it again. There was one morning, it was the weirdest thing in the world, man. It was like I was listening to it, and I was writing down the numbers and the letters and everything else, and my mind wandered to something else. And I was thinking about something else, and my hand was still writing what the Morse code was. So the neurons in the brain had actually made the connections and everything else subconsciously, and I didn't even have to think about it. It started writing, my hand started writing what it was, and I distinctly remember going, wow, this is the most weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life, where I was actually writing out the numbers and the letters and everything else without even thinking about it. So it's amazing. It really is. And getting on the air and doing that with people, they're very courteous, very kind, and everything else, except for that one person I told you guys about. So it's something to consider. Something definitely to consider. I hope to go back to CW sometime soon. I would really like to be able to do that. Also, I want to touch base a little bit on digital. As far as ARES is concerned, Amateur Radio Emergency Services, we do use digital. It's very useful during emergencies on passing lists of supplies that are needed or something like that. Dan was working with pictures where the picture was taken and could be sent over the air as well for pictures. So I don't want to come off thinking that digital isn't important. It is. It's just that there's so many modes, and I think it's already been agreed upon as to what we would be using for ARES and stick to that as a standard. So we do have a standard. So just so everybody knows that. I'm going to move forward unless we have any questions. Okay, no questions. Very good. So I'm going to do share again. And we're going to get a great picture of John. And then I'm going to do this over here. Let me do this. Can everybody see that in an emergency?
Yes, we're seeing it.
See that? Perfect. Thanks, John. So this time we're going to be in an emergency. If you find yourself in an emergency situation, you should send a distress call on whatever frequency has the best chance of communicating the distress message. There's been a lot of controversy on this one as far as actually because of the Baofeng radios and being able to transmit on police and fire and so on. There has been a lot of controversy as to whether or not a person could actually transmit on those frequencies, and indeed you can. If someone is injured or it's a matter of life and death and so on, you could actually transmit on those frequencies if you needed to. You need to have a good excuse for doing that though. So it could really be call on whatever frequency is the best chance of communicating a distress message, although the ham bands, usually people are monitoring as well. There was a time where when we were doing the fires, the complex fires, where we were using radios that were by the county, and we were talking to the county dispatchers. So we were able to transmit on those radios as well. First thing you should do if you're communicating with another amateur station and hear a station in distress break in, It really is important that we have courtesy. We think of others. If somebody says break, break, or emergency traffic, we need to go ahead and stop and let that traffic go by. That's part of what we are, what we do. In piece of information that's really important also is that's the reason why we always put a break between transmissions. So if John is talking to me, he'll stop like 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, around 4 seconds, 5 seconds, somewhere around there. And then I'll transmit and I'll respond back to John. This allows a break. If somebody has any emergency traffic, they can get in. I've seen people where they're talking off the repeater where they're not giving a break at all, and that's really uncourteous indeed. Before amateur stations may provide communications to broadcasters for dissemination to the public, it must contain retransmission of weather and propagation forecast information from the U.S. government stations. So that's what is allowed, is just weather and propagation forecast information. That's relational to ham radio and safety. Anything else, like for instance, Rush Limbaugh, is probably a no. Yeah, that would be a no. So just to keep that in mind. Only a person holding an FCC-issued amateur radio license may be the control operator of an amateur station transmitting in RACES to assist relief operations during a disaster. So, yeah, so we can do anything during RACES. I actually, and then Gary, that's the reason why I was asking you about RACES. I thought I heard Cap saying something about RACES. So I need to do a little bit more research on that. I sent an email to Robert Ritchie about that. I kind of didn't want to Cap. Anytime during an actual emergency, an amateur station is allowed to use any means at its disposal to assist another station in distress. Right, and it's got to do with life-threatening or property protection. Yeah, that's something that's really important too, is keeping a log as to what you had to do and what the situation was. Yeah, and that's another thing too, is make sure it's a real emergency. Not that somebody's out of water or they need food or something like that. I don't know if that really would qualify as an actual real emergency that's life-threatening or property protection. So let's see. These are all the questions here. Does anybody have any questions on this as far as emergencies are concerned? There can be quite a few questions on this, although the ones that we just covered seem pretty simple. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the whole night, all the things that we've been covering?
Rob, I just had a comment, and I mentioned this before, is that if these subjects and questions look familiar, like didn't we just have these questions on the technician?
Right. Yep.
There's a lot of overlap in the questions.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. How are you doing as the concerned? Is there any suggestions, thoughts, or anything like that? I will take that as a no.
Good session. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I think we're done. We can wrap up early. John, did you want to add anything to it? I think John took a break.
John, you're muted.
He's not muted, but there's no audio.
I might as well be muted.
Doesn't matter because I didn't
Perfect.
have anything much to say. Who has comments or questions about any topic?
Here's a question. What does mark and space refer to? Is it just plain language, or does it refer to some physical thing going on when you have the basically what looks like ones and zeros?
It's just terminology. The frequency shift keying sends signals at one frequency or another frequency. And just to give them a name, one is called mark and one is called space. The idle state, when there's no data being sent, is sending the space frequency. But it's just the names that were given to those. Again, this comes from the late 1920s, before there were computers or anything. So it's really old technology. Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Any others?
Okay, no, we can't end until there's at least one more good question. I'm sorry, we have rules.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question, but I don't know if it's a good question.
Well, we'll tell you.
Yeah, you can feel free to mute me if it isn't. Somewhere in this week's reading was a mention of SSTV transmission.
Slow scan television.
Slow scan
yes.
television. That seems like an oxymoron. How do you transmit images over sound? I don't know if anybody wants to get into that or not.
The answer is very slowly. The answer is very slowly. If you think of it, if you remember all the old-fashioned faxes, if you're old enough to have ever sent a fax,
oh yeah,
basically there's an image that gets scanned and sent to the other side. That's kind of slow scan television. The frame rates are quite slow, and the reason for that is there's not much bandwidth available on the HF bands, but you can send a series of images using this slow scan television technique, and you might even find somebody who could receive it. It's not terribly popular, but there's probably still some people doing it.
The International Space Station just finished up a slow scan TV event where they were sending.
Oh, good. Okay. So it's the technology can't be too old if they've got it on the International Space Station.
And are the images static, or can you actually send very slow video?
Well, it's a slow frame. It's video, but it's a slow frame rate. I don't remember the standard.
If I recall correctly, I think it's 1 frame per hour. No,
it's faster than that.
I know it is. I know. It
10
might as
frames
well
per
be an
second.
hour.
10 frames per second, someone says?
Correct.
Okay.
What was it? 15?
10.
10.
10, okay.
With a large enough replay buffer, you could probably make it work.
Yeah, probably.
And the SSTV, that's just images. That doesn't have an accompanying sound with it, right?
Right. I've never played with this, so I just know what I've read about it.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around watching TV over the radio, and
broadcast television uses radio waves.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can use sign language.
Allison could use sign language. I don't know how to use sign language.
Well, there you go. Yep, see, there you go.
Okay, I sense that we're about done. If there's no final questions, we'll wrap it up for today. Next week, Monday, your instructor will be Dan and 6RJX, going to be covering the stuff that's on pages 83 through 111 in the Gordon West text that's on the syllabus that I sent out. And Gary, K6PDL, is going to be talking some more about QSL cards, which are kind of fun. I'll send a link to a video of this to any of you who missed part of it, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
I sent you a link in the comments about slow scan. It takes about a minute to send this image.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.